Welcome to the groundbreaking news program that delves into the heart of Mormonism, your weekly window into the unique intersection of news, history, and culture that resonates with the tapestry of Mormonism. So, whether you are tuning in from the heart of Utah or joining us from around the world, your favorite news program starts now, where news meets insight and the stories of our faith unfold.
No, I just picked a voice to do our intro, and strangely, it sounds like somebody we know. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. I am joined by my esteemed colleagues, Rebecca, Biblioteca, and Radio Free Mormon. How are the two of you this evening?
We are fabulous. I have to start out by thanking RFM for always keeping me grounded as I am on the newscast. I was talking to him earlier on the phone as I was rushing home commuting. I left work. I get on a commuter train. I have to drive home after that. It's kind of a slog to get here and get on at 6 o'clock. And I was complaining to him and I was saying, I got to get home. I got to comb my hair. I got to get on the newscast. And he said, why start now? Yeah. Thank you, RFM, for always making sure that I'm grounded.
You're welcome. You're looking rather kempt this evening, I must say.
One of you has to get up a little extra early to do their hair, and the other one doesn't.
Nope.
All right.
I just how and go. But let me tell you something. About that opening. That voice sounded familiar, and never has the name of Nemo been more apropos.
Yes. And just FYI, thank you, Nemo. We had a voice that sounded a little bit like you, but Nemo did not record that. That was not him. So let's move on to the show, you guys. It is Monday, December 16th, 2024. And tonight's newscast, the focus story is LDS cartoons inoculate children. This will be Rebecca Biblioteca. The other stories that we have tonight, a controversial news headline changed. This will be Radio Free Mormon. BYU name, image, likeness update. I will be giving that, and it's on a previous story that we talked about. How much does it cost to be a seminary teacher? Is another one we'll cover tonight. Fasting for 4 months. That's insane. And then we've got the 17 diapers controversy. Not 14 diapers, not 15 diapers, not 16 diapers, but 17 diapers. And let's begin with Rebecca Biblioteca.
All right. Well, before I start my story about, the polygamy cartoons, last week we took guesses, we took votes for this incredible monument that was going to be unveiled at BYU, Idaho. I actually got one of my friends to wake her son up out of his dorm and pay him $20 to run over and be there for the excitement. And here it is, everybody.
That looks exciting.
It's pretty exciting. It's BYU. There it is. And I have to say, last week I mentioned, what about an Elder Bednar statue? Because he was one of the pivotal presidents. I still say they could do that. I still say they could add him if they wanted to after the fact. So that's my recommendation. But anyway, for those of you that were on the edge of your seats wondering what the new monument statue at BYU, Idaho is, there it is. I'm sure we're all very excited. All right, I will move on to the top story of tonight. So probably a lot of you have seen a lot of posts about this. You've probably listened to some podcasts about this. This is quite big, actually. And over the weekend, I think it was Friday, actually, our good friend Ron Jorgensen, Masterpiece, sent me a message. And he said, look what I just found. And he kind of went through the different screens. And then he started sending me some screenshots. And I said, oh, my goodness, this is kind of important. I think you need to start posting this wherever you can. And he did. By the time I woke up the next morning, so many people had picked it up and started posting about it. Natasha Helfer, Julie Hanks, Lindsay Hansen Park, a lot of people were weighing in because it was so concerning. And for any of you that don't know what we're talking about, I'll kind of go through it here. So this is the LDS Gospel Library. You simply type in LDS Library, LDS Gospel Library into your URL browser, and it's going to come up with this screen right here. And then you're going to click on scriptures, right? Because you want to know about the scriptures. The next screen shows you scripture stories. You click on that. And then in this case, the one that Ron found specifically that was so problematic was under Doctrine and Covenants. However, there's all kinds of stories. And that's the other funny thing is then people started kind of catching the bug and looking through the stories. So we're seeing a lot of posts pop up about other stories that are a little problematic. It's more about what they leave out than what they leave in. And I think that's where the concern is. So anyway, that's how you find it. Several people have said, where is this exactly? It's on the church's own website in the library. So a lot of people have pointed out, if you look here, the pictures of the scripture stories, it looks very much like a Jehovah's Witness website. Here is their illustrated Bible stories. Very same thing. List of, cartoon-like illustrations, and then you click on it and you go into a condensed Bible story written for, a youth level. So people are like, wow, this is very interesting. We're kind of taking a page out of the JW book. This illustrated Bible and some of their other scripture stories has been around for a really long time. And it looks like the church is now catching up, kind of in that bid to become more Christian. I think they're sort of doing what other churches are doing. So we will go through this very quickly, just so you guys can see what struck Ron right away. And when he showed me, I said, this needs to get out there because it's very problematic. So at the beginning of it, it says plural marriage, and then it has a subheading, which I didn't print out. RFM, can you read the subheading exactly for us?
Faith to obey a law from the Lord, even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard. And that's what people are taking exception to, as you will find out as we go through this. Faith to obey the Lord, even when it's hard, right? So the first picture is Joseph Smith, and he's reading the Bible, and it says, while the prophet Joseph Smith was studying the Bible, he read about prophets like Abraham and Moses, who had been married to more than one wife. Joseph wondered how the Lord felt about that, so he decided to ask the Lord. Keep in mind, these are geared toward children, right? This is something that a parent would go through with their child, maybe a primary teacher. Topic is plural marriage. And it has a footnote, of course, and most of them take you back to Saints, a chapter and a page number in Saints, also the D&C, of course. So this next picture is Joseph kind of thinking about biblical times, and it says, the Lord said that usually a man should have only one wife, but sometimes the Lord commanded his people to be in marriages of one man and more than one woman. This was called plural marriage. The Lord told Joseph that his people should only be in plural marriages if he commanded it. Okay, that sounds good. Flash forward a little bit. A few years later, the Lord told Joseph to marry other women.
Okay,
At
Rebecca.
point, yes.
Are you kidding? Is this really in the
This
church
is real.
manual?
Yeah. And I know there's
Okay.
confusion because then I started making memes to make a point, right? And Ron started making them too. This is on the church's website. And that's where I really started to get concerned when I read that sentence. A few years later, it's just so happy and friendly. A few years later, the Lord told Joseph to marry other women. And this is what a parent is reading to their child, to their daughter, right? Perhaps a Sunday school primary teacher is sharing this with the kids. Yeah. And it goes on from there. Joseph didn't want to marry other wives, but he knew it was a commandment from the Lord. When Joseph asked a woman to marry him, he told her to pray about it. He wanted her to know from the Lord that it was right. And there's a reference to Saints, several different pages. And again, I think any of you that know anything about church history have read the D&C, you can already start to see the gaping holes of what they are leaving out here. And I think that's where the concern lies. And then all these other posts that I talked about, Natasha and Lindsay and Julie, the word grooming was used, grooming of young girls to be accepting of this idea of polygamy, and inoculation, as we used in our headline.
I was just going to say, it strikes me here, and I don't know that this is the first time I've seen this kind of thing, but there is an effort here to equalize the suffering that this brought to both Joseph and Emma. It was hard for Joseph to do what God wanted him to do because he didn't want to marry other wives. And then the top line of the next panel, this commandment was also hard for Joseph's first wife.
Exactly. Yeah.
I find that execrable.
Yeah. Everybody in this story just does not want to do it. But remember the heading you read, sometimes you have to do hard things, even if you don't want to do it, if the Lord commands it. So yes, you're right, RFM. They bring Emma into it here. There's a picture of Joseph and Emma sitting on a bed, I think, holding hands. And in all these pictures, Joseph looks just despondent and very upset, right, of what he's being asked to do. His little cartoon face just looks really worried in every one of these pictures. And it says this commandment was also hard for Joseph's first wife, Emma, you think? Sometimes Emma helped Joseph decide who he would ask to marry him. Other times, Emma did not want Joseph to marry other women. Again, I try to picture myself reading this story to my little kids. I didn't ever have daughters, but I feel like it would just raise so many questions in almost every single sentence where the kids would just be going, I don't understand what's happening, right? As an adult, I don't understand their version of it. So it goes on, and here is Joseph in the school of the prophets. And again, if you look at their cartoon faces, they just look so worried about what he's telling them. You can tell they don't want to do it. They're under great duress, but again, have to do hard things, right? It says, Joseph taught the 12 apostles about plural marriage. It was a hard commandment for them too.
Okay, I got to tell you something.
Yes.
They're kidding us. This is like Robin Williams ad-libbing all the stuff with the genie that got left in the movie that they didn't notice. They are working hard into this so many times. And how many panels are they going to have a bed drawn into it is what I want to know. It was like the first two on the page. Here we got Brigham. We get a break from the school of the prophets.
Yeah.
But really, I think some people are having fun with this.
I can't imagine who created this. And I mean, of course, there's no author listed or anything. And if it was reviewed, was there no person that looked at this and just thought, this is not a good look? This is inoculation. This is grooming. You're right. There are so many pictures with 2 pictures with a bed in it. I don't know how this got through the review process. How could you not be?
See that one?
Yeah. Yep. There it is. You're right. How could you be that little aware of what you're saying or what you're encouraging children to be exposed to? So you're right. We leave the school of prophets. He's told everybody that unfortunately they're going to have to be with a lot of women. God damn, it's just really unfortunate. And now here we move over to Brigham Young, and he's with his wife at the bedside, and they're clasping hands, and she looks like she's praying to understand, and he looks just, oh God, just don't make me marry 55. What, please? But you have to do hard things. So
is this Brigham Young's wife, or is this from his mission to Japan?
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure. Again, the cartoons are interesting. The text is interesting. I would love to find out more about where this came from. Maybe somebody knows. I don't know. So this frame here says Brigham Young and his wife, Mary Ann, prayed a lot to the Lord about what to do. I bet they did. They learned that they should obey the commandment of plural marriage. So they arrived that they also have to do hard things. And this is one of the things they have to do.
By the way, Rebecca.
Yes.
Everybody's getting the same answer from God, that they need to do this. And this is being rehearsed like a testimony meeting for your children.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And as we know, there have been recent conference talks and articles that say if you get an answer that's different from what, God is telling for us through the prophet, you just need to keep praying till you get that answer. You know what he wants you to do, hard things.
I predict this will be gone by Christmas.
I keep looking at it every day because I felt like it should have probably been gone the first day that all of those, very prominent podcasters started talking about it, and very serious.
Including you.
Are you including me? Thank you.
I am. And Landon says,
we're talking therapists like Natasha and Julie Hanks.
Yes.
They're talking about this and talking about it from a professional level about the harm that this can cause. I don't have that background. I just know as a mom, how awful I find this. So, okay. So now we have a
Landon,
picture.
Landon, he's noting that they never show any of them with more than one woman. They never actually depict it.
No, they're not going to depict it. And maybe later there'll be more cartoons where they do, but it's kind of like the seer stone, right? They're not going to show the face in the hat. They're going to show it near the hat they're always with their first wife as they talk about this commandment. That's hard. Good comment, Landon. So the next scene, they're in court, right? And it says, for many years, some of the saints were asked to be in plural marriages. And they never say polygamy either. It's always plural marriage, right? That's a big distinction there. People outside the church did not like plural marriage, and they made laws against it. And Landon made this point to me earlier. There were already laws against it. This was the moral code of the United States. It was not something that they noticed and started making laws. There were already laws in place. They made laws against it. Some saints, including church leaders, were put in prison. Again, I try to picture a child being read this and going, a prophet went to jail, Mom? I mean, it's just so much information to take in, and it's all very scary and disturbing. You know, jail
Those
is
bad
scary.
non-Mormons. Those bad non-Mormons.
Yep, exactly. But the Lord blessed the families who obeyed his commandments, even when it was hard. Again.
So what did he do for them exactly? That's what I want to know.
I'm not exactly sure, but they did something. Okay. Oops. And then we go to our final one. And this is Wilford Woodruff. We flash forward, 60 years. Here we go. And it says in 1890, the Lord told Wilford Woodruff, the president of the church, that men should not marry more than one wife anymore. Done with that. It's over. The leaders of the church shared this commandment with the saints. This is still the Lord's commandment today. For now, a man should be married to only one wife. So this is why when I read this, I just went, Ron Jorgensen, I can't believe you found this. And I can't believe this is real. And I had to read it a couple times to even, almost pinch myself that it was real. And just huge reaction. Anywhere this is posted, people have very strong reactions to this. And I got to thinking, Ron sent me this today too. He's really a great researcher. Are they really trying to inoculate children? I mean, are they? Or is this just an unfortunate story that somebody put their own spin on it? It got through the editors and it's out there. Are they really systematically trying to inoculate children? And Ron found this great talk by M. Russell Ballard about a decade ago, about 8 years ago. And it says, we give medical inoculations to our precious missionaries before sending them into the mission field so they will be protected against diseases that can harm them. In a similar fashion, before you send your students into the world, inoculate them by providing faithful, thoughtful, and accurate interpretation of gospel doctrine, the scriptures, our history, and those topics that are sometimes misunderstood. To name a few such topics that are less known or controversial, I'm talking about plural marriage. That's the first one he says. Seer stones, different accounts of the first vision, the process of translation of the Book of Mormon or the Book of Abraham, gender issues, race and the priesthood, and a heavenly mother. So these are the things that the kids, the youth of today, need to be inoculated against. And the first one was plural marriage. The effort for gospel transparency and spiritual inoculation through a thoughtful study of doctrine and history, coupled with a burning testimony, is the best antidote we have to help students avoid and deal with questions, doubt, or faith crises they may face in this information age. So I submit to you that, yes, this is a very controlled and concerted effort to inoculate the youth. Here's a plan laid out by one of the apostles that this is exactly what needs to happen. So now I'll ask either of you to weigh in on this. I'm sure you've been looking at it over the weekend. What are your thoughts?
I just want to make 2 comments, okay?
Yes.
And they follow the general observation of what I said before of how horrible this is.
Yeah.
And I don't think that needs to be argued or belabored. I think everybody can see that. But the 2 points I want to observe are, number one, is that whoever made this and approved it, their faith blinds them to how horrible this is. And the second observation is that a faith that can blind you to how horrible this is problematic in some degree.
Yep, I completely agree.
Okay, a few things here. I'm going to put this back up on the screen. Number one, when I hear Ballard say inoculate them by providing faithful, thoughtful, and accurate interpretation, not accurate history, accurate interpretation. What he's saying is pick the most faithful, reasonable conclusion you can and run with it. He's not suggesting in any way actually being fair. He definitely wants it cited towards the church, and it's not accurate history. It's an accurate, faithful interpretation of such. So that's just to note that first. Then there are people in the comments. I just want to note those of you watching the newscast who choose to participate in the live chat. Number one, why is Joseph so curious to find out more about polygamy?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wonder why that might be. Then you have somebody saying that maybe this is a step one in introducing plural marriage for time, and somebody else says they're going to bring polygamy back. I can tell you right now, my 2 cents, having watched Mormonism intensely for almost 3 decades, they're not bringing polygamy back. They want to stay as far away from that as possible. And for those of you who have a fear of them bringing them back, I just don't think that's the case. Now, to the actual substance of this, they could respond and go, damned if we do, damned if we don't. You tell us we're POSs if we don't share our history. You tell us we're POSs if we do. LDS Church, speaking directly to you, you don't tell your history honestly and accurately by your own standard. Gospel Principles Manual. We've gone over this so many times. Gospel Principles Manual on honesty. There are many other forms of lying. When we speak untruths, we are guilty of lying. We can also intentionally deceive others by a gesture or a look or a cartoon comic strip, by silence or by telling only part of the truth. Now, number one, you shouldn't be teaching this to kids at all. Number two, when you give people the history of your faith, you should clearly point them to the massive evidence that runs counter to every claim that you make, because people are always going to feel deceived if they don't have all the information from the faith that's told them they're the only place that can be trusted for teaching the truth. I've run into members who don't trust Wikipedia. I've run into members who don't trust any other source if it runs counter to their faith, and they do that because Mormonism told them to. So, for the LDS Church, tell the whole story, give people all the information, but it's weird that you decide to give this to little kids, and there are lots of things that you would claim are inappropriate to give the little kids. But one thing you never give to little kids, LDS Church, is a lesson on consent and informed consent at that. So those are my thoughts.
Yep. No, you said it absolutely perfectly. If we can go back to the one slide. Yeah. And I put a picture here from Heretic, talk about inoculation. For those of you that have seen it, Mr. Reed asked the missionaries, I'm going to ask you a dicey question. It's going to be tough. It's going to make your stomach hurt. What about polygamy? And they, having been indoctrinated, they gave the answers that you're supposed to give. Well, God commanded it. And, it was to help the widows. And, very much they know the answers to this. So, this is extremely problematic. And of course, I had to just start thinking about what did they leave out? There's so much they left out. And my co-host Landon goes, well, why don't you make your own gospel book? And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. That'll be fun. So I'm going to read some of those right now. But I will note, interestingly, a lot of people who do not believe that Joseph Smith ever practiced polygamy are commenting quite heavily on anywhere this is posted, and saying that it's not accurate from the church. And it's certainly not accurate. Those of us that are making, some memes kind of facetiously to make a point. So it's very interesting what a hot button this has become, with some people saying he never practiced polygamy. Yeah. And so these are really off the rails. Even
I wish they would stop speaking ill of the Lord's anointed.
That's it. Exactly. So anyway, and what's really interesting about these memes that I made that I'm going to go through very quickly is that now they've kind of gotten intermingled with the church's one, and people can't tell the difference. So I really apologize for that, but I did try to follow their template sort of. So I'm calling these bedtime stories for LDS girls and boys, but especially girls. And if you look at the little girls' faces there, they're like, Mom, which I feel any kid would probably do if this were read to them. So one of the first things that I thought was missing, of course, is we have our angel and the flaming sword. So I said, at first, Joseph didn't want to marry so many women. God sent an angel with a flaming sword who said he would destroy Joseph if Joseph did not start marrying more women. Joseph was obedient and did what God wanted, even though Joseph never wanted to marry so many women. Sometimes God asks us to do hard things. So this is very much in the vein of what the church's thing is. I thought about another event. Here we have a lovely picture of Fanny Alger. The Lord didn't tell Joseph how he should follow the commandment of plural marriage. Joseph practiced with his teenage maid, Fanny Alger, alone in his barn. This was a hard thing for Joseph to do, but God commanded it, and Joseph wanted to be obedient. And again, very facetious, but I'm trying to point out these are the messages that the church's own story are giving to the kids. These are more extreme, and these are all the truth. So when Emma learned that Joseph was practicing plural marriage with Fanny Alger in the barn, Emma sent Fanny far away. Fanny was sad to go. Joseph was sad because he was only doing what God had told him to do in the barn with Fanny. Sometimes Emma did not understand how hard it was for Joseph to follow God's will and marry many women. Emma needed to try harder to listen to God, right? It's all back on Emma. What else happened about this scenario? When Joseph's friend, Oliver Cowdery, learned that Joseph was practicing plural marriage with Fanny Alger in the barn, Oliver thought Joseph was doing something wrong. Oliver told other people that Joseph should not do that. Joseph excommunicated Oliver from the church for criticizing him. Joseph had to do hard things to follow God's will and marry many women. We can do hard things too, even if we have to lose friends, right? That's a great message. Sometimes you have to be on the other side of what your friends are doing. Sometimes Joseph saw a woman who was already married and knew that the Lord wanted him to marry her too. But what could he do? What could he do? Joseph told husbands they needed to go on a mission. Once they left town, he could marry their wives. Joseph was following the Lord's will, even though it was hard for him to marry so many women and trick their husbands. Again, are these the kind of lessons, honestly, that you want your kids even anywhere near to know anything about this? Joseph had to marry many women that Emma didn't know about. Sometimes he was already married to women when Emma said it was all right to marry them. Then Joseph pretended to marry them for the first time. It's hard to do what the Lord wants, but it's important to follow his will, even if you have to lie to someone. That's an important lesson too. Sometimes the Lord told Joseph that he needed to marry a mother and a daughter at the same time. Joseph knew he couldn't question what the Lord wanted. Joseph was obedient and did whatever the Lord said, even though it was a hard thing to do. And how many times did we hear that in the church's version? The Lord even wanted Joseph to marry sisters. It was hard for Joseph to marry so many women, but he was faithful and followed the Lord's will. To help Emma understand that the Lord wanted Joseph to marry so many women, Joseph showed Emma a special revelation. It said that God would destroy Emma if she didn't allow Joseph to follow God's will. It's important to do what God wants, even if you don't want to. That's another underlying lesson in that original cartoon.
Can I say just how ridiculous is it? Emma, God said it right here. He'll destroy you.
Yeah.
If you don't, I mean, yeah, I'm the one who wrote, I'm the one who dictated this. It came out of my head, but from God, like, trust me, he's going to kill you if you don't do this thing you want to do.
It's always on the women. If you can't get on board with this, it's your fault,
Rebecca,
so
there's also a small update to the primary hymn book that goes along with this manual. They're changing it to, I will go, I will do the girls the Lord commands.
Oh my God.
I know the Lord provides a way he wants me to obey.
Oh, yeah. It is the underlying message of do whatever it takes, lie, cheat, go against societal norms, whatever the Lord wants you have to do. That's a very dangerous message. So I'm almost done here. Joseph told a father that God wanted Joseph to marry his 14-year-old daughter. The father was glad to give his daughter to Joseph to marry to follow God's will. We should all be glad to be obedient, right? Emma was sad that Joseph was marrying so many women. Joseph had a revelation to put Emma in charge of the Relief Society. All of Emma's friends were in the Relief Society. Emma told them how bad it was to marry many women. Emma didn't know that most of her friends were already married to her husband, Joseph. Sometimes you have to lie to your friends if God wants you to. Makes sense. And two more. A girl named Zena fell in love and got married. Soon she was very happy to learn she was having a baby. Joseph wanted Zena to marry him. Zena thought she had to marry Joseph, so she did. Joseph sent her husband on a mission. Her husband was sad to leave Zena and the baby. Sometimes you have to make people sad in order to follow the commandments. And the very last one, Joseph married many women. His brother Hiram married many women too. One day, Joseph and Hiram were killed. What would happen to all of their many wives? Joseph's friends, Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball, married the extra wives. They didn't want to marry so many more women. They were already married to many women. But it's what God wanted, and Brigham and Heber were obedient. So I had a lot of fun doing that. Ron Jorgensen also put out some a little more heavy on actual church history, but it really is a way to kind of show people what really exists there between the lines in the church's cartoons. So I'm going to be curious to see what happens to it. Will they remove it? Will they change it? Is there more that we haven't discovered yet? I don't know, but it's very disturbing to me.
It is disturbing. But on the other hand, I want to lead the audience a round of applause for what incredible creative work you did. That's fantastic.
I have too much time on my hands, obviously, right?
You have a talent for satire.
Well, when I'm angry, yeah, satire is my weapon. It's kind of my secret weapon, that's for sure. So, yep, that's all I had there. Do you guys have any more comments, or should we move to the next story?
I'm good. RFM.
I'm ready.
I think we're good.
Excellent. So we will turn to the next story. Mr. Radio Free Mormon, what do you have for us?
By the way, speaking of kids and things that are appropriate and not appropriate, if there's any little kids in the room, you might want to get them out of the room right now. And I would say, what age would you think would be appropriate? Let's look at Rebecca. She's the librarian. She'll lead us, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe a teenager could listen to this, but nobody younger than that, since it has to do with predatory behavior and grooming.
Okay. All right. You've had your warning. So here we go. Man arrested in child sex sting in Lehi, Utah. Now, this has been getting a little bit of play because of some tampering by the church with the original headline. But I came to the office, this morning, bright and early, to start researching this. And I thought I can find this pretty easy because I know it's KUTV. And I know that it's Lehi, and it's an arrest, and it's a child sex sting. So I Google that, and I get pages of this kind of crap going on in Lehi, Utah. I'm just going to show you the first page. I clicked on the links. These are not the ones that I was looking for. Here's the first one. This is the first surprise to me. This is June 23rd, 2019. 6 arrests made in Lehi with suspects trying to meet teenagers for sex. November 22nd, 2019. Leighton man arrested in Lehi for allegedly having sex with teen girl. October 3rd, 2020. Clearfield man arrested for sexually enticing a minor in Lehi. October 31st of 2020. Police say man arrested for trying to meet teen he was in love with at a Lehi park. Now that's going to be another sting operation. That's why they put teen in quotation marks. This Halloween in 2020 was a twofer because this is also from the same date. A Provo man accused of trying to hook up with a 13-year-old girl in Lehi. Here we go from November 22nd, 2022. Lehi man charged with putting children's faces on pornographic videos. October 29th, 2023. 3 arrested after chat operation with undercover Lehi detectives portraying as juveniles. And here is February 27th, 2024, at least for this year now. Lehi man arrested accused of sexually assaulting 11-year-old he met on internet. November 16th, 2024. Lehi man arrested for alleged sexual abuse of a minor. And finally, we come to the one that I was looking for. From December 13th, that's 3 days ago. So I think that's Friday, last Friday. So here is the article I was looking for. Salt Lake County man charged with arranging to meet 13-year-old for sex in Lehi. So the first thing I wanted to say is, what is going on in Lehi? Is it really that horrible? Any amount of this is horrible. And I say, is it really that horrible, or is it possibly because their detectives in their police department is doing these stings so often? I don't know. But folks, look out for your kids. It is a dangerous world out there in Lehi and pretty much in everywhere. Trust no one. This is the article, though, from December 13th. Second big surprise is that they changed the headline. First off, from floodlit.org, we covered this last Friday at Mormonism After Dark. Remember, Bill? Can you read this part from Floodlit where it says, can you spot the differences?
Yep. So can you spot the differences? KUTV altered an article today to remove references to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS/Mormon. The article reported on criminal charges filed against a Mormon youth temple prep teacher.
Right. And now my next slide is focusing in on these two different changes. So here's the first one. Interestingly, they actually redacted the name of the reporter, which may have been going overboard, but better too much than too little, I guess. The first headline was Utah mission leader, temple prep instructor, charged with numerous child sex crimes. Notice these are both from December 13th. This is at 9:35 a.m. Then by 9:45 a.m. I'm sorry, updated. Look at the update. Updated 9:45 a.m. for the first one. Then it was updated again at 12:41 p.m. the same day. And it was changed from Utah mission leader, temple prep instructor charged with numerous child sex crimes to church youth instructor charged with arranging to meet 13-year-old for sex in Lehi. So in 3 hours, somebody contacted the news editors at KUTV, by the way, and we got corrected in the live chat, Bill. The church does not own KUTV. They own KSL. So the church has this impact even in a news media company that they don't own. I don't know that they probably own shares, but
that shouldn't surprise folks, because the Salt Lake Tribune has had a record of going really soft on the church and not going after them as hard as I think a standard news outlet would go after certain stories. And there seems to be some pull or sway that the church has even in entities that it doesn't own.
Very good. So what I want to do is notice that they also changed the first line of the story. Now, interestingly, I'm expecting the date line is supposed to be Salt Lake City. Instead, it says Sale Lake City on both. And the first line in the first article, the first version of the article, is a Salt Lake County man who serves as a mission leader and temple prep instructor for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was charged with several offenses relating to child sex crimes. That's a good lead for an article. There's a lot of who, what, when, where, how, and why in that first line. So, but 3 hours later, after somebody was contacted, it was changed to, even the first line was changed to a Salt Lake County man who works with adolescents in a church setting was charged with several offenses relating to child sex crimes. So you can see how much it was changed in order to obscure the Mormon relationship between this guy who just got arrested and the church. Now, as I said, we reported on this Friday night. What I did not know until this morning as I was researching this is that later the same day in the evening on December 13th, they changed it again to make it even more innocuous as far as the church goes. So there's church youth instructor charged with arranging to meet 13-year-old for sex in Lehi. That was the last one. And then it was changed to Salt Lake County man charged with arranging to meet 13-year-old for sex in Lehi. Okay? Not church youth instructor anymore. Just a Salt Lake County man. They also changed the first line of a Salt Lake County man who works with adolescents in a church setting. Let's see what they changed that to. A Salt Lake County man was arrested after police said he arranged to meet an officer who was posing as a 13-year-old girl.
Church is gone completely.
Boom, baby.
Wow.
Down the memory hole. It's hard to put things down the memory hole in the age of the internet. So that's what they did. So that's the second big thing. The third thing is the story itself, which I'm going to go over with you. It's actually, this is a horrible thing to say, and it's horrible because it's true, is that this is kind of a run-of-the-mill sting operation, is what they're reporting here. And this guy who got arrested as a result. Once again, it's Sale Lake City. I did not put that in there. That is in the original. A Salt Lake County man was arrested after police said he arranged to meet an officer who was posing as a 13-year-old girl. If you don't understand this yet, I will tell you this is from the most recent incarnation of the story. This is the one that they have up now. It's not necessarily the first one or the second one. Paul Spencer, 54, was arrested on Thursday, December 10th, after a days-long undercover investigation ended when he traveled to Utah County to engage in sexual acts with who he believed to be a teenage girl. Police documents stated this investigation began on December 4th when an undercover Utah County Sheriff's Office detective posing as a 13-year-old girl on a social media platform was contacted by Spencer, who identified himself as Kevin. On December 6th, Spencer was advised he was chatting with a junior high student, to which he replied, in other words, the undercover detective, who's a female, is saying that she's in junior high. To which he replied, "It's okay." Spencer was sent photos of the alleged child and highly complimented her looks before making sexually charged statements about her. He expressed via text that he is married, understood he should not be chatting with a minor, and his fear of going to jail, which fear is going to be realized and already has been. So let me just make a little comment here about this. When they talk about the photos of the alleged child, the cops don't just use photos of anybody at random grabbed off the internet. They actually have to sort of know these people, or there has to be an arrangement made whereby the juvenile, it's usually a female juvenile in their teens, is signing up for this. For example, I know of a girl who did this. She was the daughter of the chief of the jail over here a number of years ago. And, it was all this contract, and sign it up and say, okay, yeah, it's okay for you to use my image in order, for bait in these kind of sting operations. So that's what that is referring to, the alleged child. Any comments before I go to the second page of the story? No? Okay, so this is the most recent permutation. I'm not seeing anything that would link anything about this to the church at this point. Let's see if there's anything here. The messages between Spencer and who he believed to be the young girl went on for several more days. On December 9th, arrangements were made for Spencer to meet up with the girl in Lehigh after she got out of school. Spencer arrived at the meeting location in his truck on December 10th. After driving through the parking lot of the meet location, he exited and began heading to Lehigh Junior High in what appeared to be an attempt to find her. The detective then messaged Spencer as a child, and he immediately pulled into a driveway to turn around, replying with a text that read, "I'm almost there." At that point, detectives made contact and took Spencer into custody. During an interview with Utah County authorities, Spencer was adamant that he was turning around because he changed his mind about meeting with the child and admitted he knew what he was doing was wrong. Officials asked the courts to hold Spencer without bail because during the arrest, he told them he works with boys and girls between the ages of 15 and 17 years old. Here it is now, in a church setting. So there it is. That's it. And then the final line, Spencer was booked into the Utah County Jail and charged with multiple counts, including felony attempted sexual abuse of a child and enticing a minor using the internet. So any comments about this story? There's one other segment that I'll go into, but so far, with all the stories related to Lehigh, Utah of a similar vein, I know we talked about that a little bit, Rebecca, and you said there's like 3 parts of Lehigh now. There's the older part of Lehigh, there's the new tech part of Lehigh, and then there's the child sex part of Lehigh. Is that what you said?
There we go. Yeah, I'm not sure I said that. They are getting a temple though. And I do work in Lehigh. I drive through Lehigh every day. So I can't explain why there are so many of these stories coming out of there. It's really interesting. I have no explanation.
And once again, it could be because they're just leaning really heavy on the sting operation.
And that's true. That's true.
So,
that particular department, police department. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to leave open that possibility. But honestly, I see a link between this story and the story that you did about those teaching plural marriage to little kids, to little girls. My God, those books are designed to be read by adults to little people. That's what they're designed for. I mean, how easy do you want to make it to groom little kids?
Well, and if I can say one thing, and as I was talking to Ron about this, he brought up the story of Jan Broberg. I don't know if you remember that story. She was a Mormon in Pocatello. She was groomed and kidnapped by her home teacher and family friend. And that was exactly kind of the angle that he tried to persuade her that aliens wanted her to have the first baby to save the alien race. He went as far as putting a tape recorder in her room. But in the documentaries I've watched, she said things like, well, I knew that Mary had to have a baby. Mm-hmm. Of course, back then she wouldn't have known about Joseph Smith. That wasn't really known in the 70s. But again, you have to think about what these messages say to girls. You know, you have a special purpose. You have to have a baby. You have to be with me. People who are diabolical, like this man we're talking about, they can use those kinds of things to groom LDS kids who tend to be on the naive side, tend to be magical thinkers. You can use things to persuade them to do things that they wouldn't normally do, but they get, you know, it's confused in their mind. So yeah, very dangerous.
I see a second connection. You made the one connection to the past story that Rebecca covered, RFM. There's a second connection. Notice that when someone is giving the church a bad rap, that there is influence used to obscure the story, to water it down, to make it so that the reader cannot clearly understand that there's a connection to the LDS Church. That seems so intentional. The fact that it happened twice, going from clearly laying out parts of the story that I think are important to the community from a journalistic entity, a newspaper, news program, a news show. And then notice too, in the very first story, the church wants to tell the truth about something, a little tiny piece of the puzzle, but it wants to leave out so much other stuff. And it has no problem being deceptive to its members while trying to inoculate children about something it has no business doing. And I'll also say it sets up that first story that Rebecca covered. Teaching it the way they do is suggesting to kids that even when they're uncomfortable inside, that they should listen to what their church leader tells them. Church loves that message. But think for a moment about how easily your children can be abused with that message. Your children are never going to interact with the prophet. They're going to interact with a young men's president, a young women's president, a bishop, a primary teacher. Those are the people that can hurt them. And the church messages in this is, even when things don't feel right, do what the church leader and what God tells the church leader to tell you to do. In the second story, the church is just trying to keep its bad name. You know, it's that whole thing of, you know, we have to protect the good name of the church, except the church's name isn't good. It's not good in the general public. It's not good with the SEC or the IRS. It's not good with those who have deconstructed the faith. It's not good with those who have been abused by it. The church doesn't have a good name. But in both instances, the church has no problem obfuscating and carrying out unhealthy behavior in order to protect itself as the number one priority.
Here's what I want to say about that story. There are apologists out there, and you know who you are, who say that the church does not hide its past. For God's sake, they're hiding the present, right here, right in front of your face. Why do you think that they wouldn't change and hide the past when they're currently changing and hiding what's going on in current events?
Can I make one comment about current events?
Yeah.
I have a little bit of experience with this in Utah, and I agree with my co-host Landon. He made a comment earlier that Bill put up on the screen that says we no longer have to destroy the press, right? You can just suppress the press. So when Mormonish first started talking to Cody, Wyoming about their scenario there, they were getting tons of press in the local papers there. It was great. You know, we just kind of gave them some extra information. We did some podcasting about Cody. So then we're contacted by Heber very soon after our first podcast with Cody. And we meet with some of the people there. And they said, we can't get any coverage anywhere with this. Would your podcast be willing to just tell our story or share our concerns or our point of view? And I said, really? Have you tried? And they said, oh, we've tried. We have contacted every station. They said, one flat out said, no, we're not going to cover your side of that, right? And we're talking about the Heber Temple. They had the groundbreaking, and there's a residents group that's trying to say, it's too tall. It doesn't fit here. You know, with the zoning, can we move it somewhere else? And they were organizing. So one news outlet said, nope, not interested in your side of the story, which is crazy. Who wouldn't be interested in a grassroots residents group, you know, pushing back on a building? That's news. Another station came out and did an interview. They were kind of excited about that. They told us, oh, I think we got a bite. They came out, they talked to us. They were later told the story was pulled. It was never run. This was very early on. I think now you do see it became impossible to ignore the residence group in Heber, and they talked about it. But at the very beginning, the only people that would cover it was Mormonish, right? And that's why they came to us. They said, we can't get any traction anywhere. So you can't tell me that there isn't some larger power, sort of reaching down and influencing the stories they want out, the stories they don't want out, the headlines they want, the headlines they don't want.
I'm sure that they would say the same thing that they used to say about the scads of excommunications happening at the same time. That they would say, oh, there's no interference from the leaders at the top. These are all independent, individually made decisions that just happen to happen at the same time. What's this, Bill Reel?
Yeah, I just want to note for anybody who's a believer watching and going, the church doesn't have any more abuse going on than any other place in the world. That's just not true. And so when we highlight stories like this and say, you can see that the LDS Church is trying to protect its name, in instances where lots of these people and lots of these stories exist, where lots of these people use the faith, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, either as a place to meet up with their victims because they're just a fellow member of the ward and they're sort of working their in with whether it's a kid or a young adult woman or whatever it is. There are lots of stories where it's either a bishop or a seminary teacher or a young men's president or a scoutmaster, when we used to be tied to the scouts, that would commit this abuse. And it would often happen in a church setting or in some sort of church relationship where the adult has some sort of authority and they're using that to gain access to the child. Because of that, and because of what's on the screen, which is that Utah has extremely high sex abuse rates in comparison to national statistics. When you note those two things, it is crucial that the general public be given the full story so that all of us can make connections and protect our children. And the church, by trying to protect its good name, ends up leaving children and potential victims more vulnerable to abuse.
I would say one other thing here, and that is simply my reasoning for coming to the conclusion that the KUTV was contacted by the church or its agents, and that's what caused these changes, 2 of them, over the course of one day, last Friday, December 13th. It's very simple, because I think there's some discussion maybe going on about that. The changes are there. The changes are documented. No one's arguing about the fact that the changes have occurred, I believe. And all the changes trend in one direction. And that direction is to remove anything identifiable about the LDS Church from the story, including the names of callings in the very first story, from the headline and from the story. So having documented those things, what are we to conclude from that? That's the question I pose.
And then here's just another one. Utah rape rates are 33% higher than the US average. When you have relationships in your community that are based on trusting your local plumber who lives 2 blocks away as speaking to God for you, when you've been taught all your life to trust priesthood, when you've been taught all your life to trust local leadership, when you've been taught all your life to give up wanting to listen to your own voice inside and to listen to outside authorities as having more authority for what's right for you than your own inner voice, you are creating an environment where the boundaries that are established, you've been taught unsafe boundaries as safe boundaries, and inevitably molestation, rape, and abuse are going to be more prevalent.
All right. Well, I have a little bit more to go, so let's do that, shall we? Okay, this puts me in mind of a case that I was involved in, a sting operation exactly like this. They all run along the same lines, these kinds of operations. And this was the name of the case, State versus Solomon from 2018. It's reported in the Court of Appeals from Washington State Division 1. And this was decided on May 29, 2018. So obviously, all the stuff that I was involved in happened prior to that. Now, I did not represent Joshua Solomon. He was a defendant in a sting like this locally. And but the attorney who did represent him wanted me to review the police report, see if there was an issue or anything that I could find. I did, and I did. And the issue that I found here is that in this case, I believed and brought a motion and drafted a motion that the police in this case went way beyond the line. Okay. There is a little known and little used basis for dismissal of a criminal charge. And that is if the government acts in an outrageous manner, that it's an outrageous misconduct by the government. Okay. And the government can do an awful lot of stuff and not get there because that's an extreme remedy. Dismissal is the most extreme remedy by definition. But as I went through this and saw what was going on, it occurred to me that this might have a chance. By the way, there's only one case in Washington State where a charge ever got dismissed on this basis. And it's called State versus Lively. It will be referenced in here. But I just wanted to mention a couple things. Here's the published opinion, okay? This is the summary. Not going to go into detail. If you want to read it, it's really interesting reading, I think, but maybe that's just because I was involved in it. A trial court may dismiss the charges against the defendant. This is the Division 1 Court of Appeals opinion. When the state is found to have engaged in outrageous misconduct in violation of a defendant's due process right to fundamental fairness, we review such a determination by the trial court for abuse of discretion. Because we brought the motion, the trial court said, I agree with you. I'm dismissing this because it is outrageous what the government did, the police did, in getting this guy charged. So then it got appealed by the prosecutor, which was a really bad mistake for them because now it's preserved forever in a published opinion that anybody can access and read. In this matter, summary again, a law enforcement officer anonymously published an advertisement on an online classifieds platform, Craigslist, reserved for those over the age of 18, and indicated that she was a young female seeking an individual interested in a casual sexual encounter. Joshua Solomon responded to the advertisement. Thereafter, the police officer assumed the guise of a fictional 14-year-old girl. This is what they always do. You start as an anonymous woman, then it progresses, and then the officer says, I'm 16, I'm 14, I'm in junior high, something to get the guy to continue with it and to show up at, hopefully not her school, but at some place that's a prearranged meet, right? And he'll have brought things that the officer pretending to be the girl tells him to bring. Okay, you can guess what those might be. It could also be money. And then they arrest the guy. They find the stuff. They put the habeas corpus on him, and now he's charged with a felony. So Joshua Solomon responded to the advertisement. Thereafter, the police officer assumed the guise of a fictional 14-year-old girl and sent Solomon nearly 100 messages, nearly 100 messages laden with graphic sexualized language and innuendo, and persistently solicited him to engage in a sexual encounter with the fictional minor, notwithstanding that he had rejected her solicitations 7 times over the course of 4 days. The trial court herein found that in their totality, the actions of the law enforcement officer constituted outrageous misconduct in violation of Solomon's right to due process and dismissed the charges against him. The trial court did not abuse its discretion by so ruling. Accordingly, we affirm. So that's the synopsis. Now, here, I got to tell you, here's where they're quoting from the judge who is making the ruling at the trial court level dismissing this particular charge. And the reason they're able to quote him so well is because I said, you know, if you're going to file this thing, just get a transcript of everything the judge said and attach it as an exhibit so that on the Court of Appeals, they'll know exactly what he said. It was memorable. So this is the judge at the trial court level. And we'll see. I hope this goes to the Court of Appeals, he's saying, which it did, because as I said, we have an impasse. It's 3 prosecutors versus 3 judges. 3 judges who have all looked at this. Interesting to see what the Court of Appeals thinks, or the Supreme Court, as to whether or not this is outrageous government misconduct. This was a remarkable moment in court because this actually happened over the course of 2 hearings. In the first hearing, and they have a footnote here in which they describe some of this. In the first hearing, at an earlier hearing, the trial judge had urged the deputy prosecutor to run the case by other prosecutors. He was giving her a high sign and saying, you probably should go to your chief criminal deputy, maybe to the elected prosecutor in the office, run it by them, see what they think about it, okay? Because the judge is indicating he's going to toss this sucker. And so then it was continued over for the prosecutor to do that. The judge mentioned that he would be doing the same with his judicial colleagues, each of whom were former prosecutors. The trial judge was a judge with 30 years of judicial experience who had previously served as the elected county prosecutor. In fact, he was the county prosecutor back in January of, what was it? 1990, when he hired me. So I just wanted to go back to this and say that this is so interesting because at the second hearing, okay, I think we've got nailed down what happened at the first hearing. At the second hearing, when he finally dismisses it, that deputy prosecutor shows up with the chief criminal deputy and with the elected prosecutor so that they can all tell the judge that they don't think this is outrageous government misconduct. So she ran it by him. They come back to report to the judge. That's why the judge is saying it's 3 prosecutors versus 3 judges. We have an impasse. 3 judges who have all looked at this, and all the judges agree it's outrageous government misconduct. And of course, the prosecutors are siding with the police. He goes on, because I think we really do. I'm not the genius on this. My word shouldn't be the final say. By the way, very canny judge, very humble. My word shouldn't be the final say, but that's true. I think we do need, because it's been a long time since Lively. That's the one other case. Now there's 2. This happens all the time. The sex trade on the internet is a horrendous problem. The detectives and law enforcement have to do something to do that. They need to do stings, and we need to have a line about how far is too far, and I think this is a good one to do that on. So more power to appellate courts and the Court of Appeals on this, and they can take a look at it. But to this judge's way of thinking, who did spend 5 years in the service, 3 of them overseas, and have seen a few monkeys and footballs. I find it outrageous and over the top. And whatever the judge meant by monkeys and footballs, I have no idea. I think he was going to say monkeys and something else and then realized it was being recorded and would be reviewed by the Court of Appeals and changed it at the last minute. In this way, oh yeah, this is finally back to the Court of Appeals. In this way, the trial court determined that the detective's use of graphic and highly sexualized language amounted to a manipulation of Solomon that was repugnant to a sense of justice. Okay. And then the final thing was just this footnote at the end.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's not a big deal. But it was about the state's briefing. I wasn't involved in the appeal, so I didn't see the state's briefing. But the state's argument on appeal is predominantly one directed at Solomon's conduct. This misses the target. Okay? Unlike the subjective approach of entrapment, where the focal issue is the predisposition of the defendant to commit the offense, an outrageous governmental misconduct inquiry focuses on the state's behavior, not on the defendant's behavior. While the defendant's actions are relevant to whether the state engaged in outrageous misconduct, which they did here, it is the actions of state agents that is the focal point. And then it was signed by the 3 judges on the Division I panel. And that is the name of that story. We're ready to go on to Bill. Hey, Bill, back to you, by the way. You're in charge.
All right, my friend. So we talked to you a little while back. I just want to check first. We should probably check in. Rebecca, do you have anything to say on the story that RFM just shared?
No, the whole thing is just unfortunate. That's all I can say. But I did see a lot of people in the comments saying they wish you would just do a podcast where you told your most outrageous legal stories. Or
that's a great one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would tune in for that. It's fascinating.
I like that one.
Yeah.
All right. So
not because a guy who was questionable got off the hook.
Got off the hook, yeah.
But because I like to stick it to the man.
Talk about sticking it to the man. BYU gave the opposite of sticking it to someone. They gave $7 million to secure the name, image, and likeness of AJ Diapers. And this is the #1 basketball prospect coming out of high school. And so now we live in an age, and some folks may not even know this yet, but we used to not pay college athletes. They were just supposed to be just grateful for having a college education, and some of them would have scholarships. But now in today's age, colleges can lure high school athletes to their school by paying them millions and millions of dollars for their name, image, and likeness. And we had covered this story on the newscast maybe a month and a half ago, checking to see what AJ was going to get, and it was rumored to be in the millions. Well, it turns out, according to most reports, it is just under $7 million that he will get. And so there were a couple of quotes from him in terms of why he chose BYU. He said, quote, "I mean, a lot stood out on my visit. Obviously, Coach Kevin Young there. My ultimate goal is to get to the NBA, and he coached one of my favorite players, my favorite player of all time, in Kevin Durant. And he had high praise about him," Diapers said. And then he said, "Head coach all the way down to the analytics guy, all the way to the dietitians. It's an all NBA staff, even a strength coach. So, I mean, if it's all NBA and I'm trying to get to the NBA, I think it's going to be the best development program." Well, Gordon Monson over at the Salt Lake Tribune said that there's all kinds of important questions that are following AJ Diapers to BYU. You can read that article to see those, but it really boils down to why he chose BYU, and certainly it has something to do with the money, and many of the national sports commentators are pointing that out. So, for instance, in a segment on the Dan Patrick Show, there was a thing that said, "I'll play for this guy who developed Kevin Durant, but I'd also like $7 million. AJ Diapers college decision shocks Dan Patrick." So this was a quote from Patrick. Here's what he said. He said, quote, "Saw that news yesterday, and I go, wait, hold on. This is the #1 recruit for next season, and he's going to BYU? And I go, I'll be damned. Danny Ainge got them to spend some money," Patrick said. And then his other quote, "I'll go there and play for this guy who developed Kevin Durant, but I'd also like $7 million, Patrick said. So he's making fun of the fact that BYU is not a place that any #1 prospect goes to with hopes of increasing their image and the awareness of their brand. But when you get paid $7 million to be a college athlete, you take the money. And that's all I've got for that story. I did want to get your guys' thoughts. We sort of saw this one coming. RFM, I don't.
There we go. That was obligatory on my part.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask a question to Rebecca. Is it legal for BYU to pay their student athletes?
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand this. I was going to say before I talk about that his parents actually went and toured the campus, and they apparently loved it. They felt it was inclusive. It was wonderful. It was a great environment for their sons. So yeah, we'll just see. But a lot of people don't know how NIL works, the payment. A lot of people, as we post about this, say, "Oh, our tithing is going here," or "the school is spending a lot of money." And that's not how it works, but it's pretty interesting. I can just talk about it for just a second because it's kind of fascinating. So a school cannot pay the athlete, right? That's not how it works. The school can't do it. It's illegal to do that. But what can happen is that these supporter collectives kind of spring up, right? Made up of boosters and other kinds of supporters. And each university has one of these. BYU has one that's called the Royal Blue. And it's made up of people who are able to make large donations, who are committed to getting these kinds of athletes here. And they put their money together and they make a donation to the athlete, who then, comes to the school and plays, but also does some charitable things while they're there, with appearances and things like that. So what's interesting to me as I was reading about this is that at other schools where they've created these collectives and are making giant donations to get athletes to their schools, they have tried to become a nonprofit, a charitable organization, a 501c3. And they've applied. They're a little farther in the timeline, I think, than BYU. And the IRS is saying, what would you guess the IRS is saying?
No way. In fact, I
No
would, if I were the
way.
IRS, I'd be saying, what are you talking about? You are
Yeah.
working yourselves to death to avoid making yourself a 501c3 organization.
Yeah, they're being denied this status, which I don't know if these collectives realize would be denied when they first, put their little plan in motion. So what that means is when they make a donation, you can't write that off, right? You're just going to have to make that donation. So from what I was reading, it's pretty likely that BYU, they're the Royal Blue collective of high net worth donors and boosters and supporters, they're not going to be able to become a 501c3 either. So that begs the question, will they continue to donate? I'm guessing yes, because this is important to BYU. This is important to the church. The church, I think, is going to have some influence and say, you guys make those donations. It's okay if it's not tax deductible. And this is what I want to look at in the future. Will they find a way? Will they find a way to have the Royal Blue make a, I don't know, charitable donation to the church? And it's somehow, you'd have to run it through Canada. And then it would somehow make its way back to pay or donate to these NIL players. I don't know. Had you guys heard anything about that? Or what do you think? I thought it was really interesting, something to watch, because if they cannot be a 501c3 and they're making $1 million donations, there might be something that's going to happen behind the scenes. So
how about this? For 2025, you don't have to pay tithing on an amount equal to your donation. Or let's make it twice as much. Let's make it, something that people will want to contribute to.
That is a brilliant idea. And I know there are workarounds. There's one I can't talk about, but I know they've made workarounds like that for people who have done favors to the church before. Yes. Where they kind of like funnel it through tithing. So I think everybody should watch, and probably people that know more than I do about NIL or their 501c3 status might be something to look into.
And remember too, in the very first time we covered this story, one of the things we talked about was that other colleges out there also have the ability to pay their athletes, but nobody could match this amount. This amount was significantly higher than any other school could offer AJ, because the way the church looks at it is that not only are they offering him a deal based on the same way another college would offer him a deal to play basketball and to have his brand lift their program, the church also sees connections here where AJ Dibansta will be able to help out the church's image. And because of that, there's added value. And so it's the reason why they went so heavy on him and went above and beyond what any other school was offering him. It was not only going to be a reflection of BYU, which is what every other Division I team is trying to do, raise the public image of their team, create a winning program, but the church sees that this could have outreaching influence on positive perceptions on the church itself, and it's the reason why they went a few extra $1 million above what any other school did.
My question is, when the church pays a student athlete $7 million to play for the Cougars, is that the equivalent of getting the second anointing?
It could be. But again, everyone's going to come after us for saying the church pays. The church doesn't pay. It's this booster group. But we're putting forward the idea that the church has ways to, definitely encourage the booster group to donate, if not somehow help them through some backdoor means. So we'll have to watch. It'll be really interesting. But again, they can buy any player they want, I feel like, don't you? They can have the all-star of all-star teams for any of their sports.
If price is the only object, yes, I agree with you.
Yep. Yeah. And if you notice all of his comments, he talked about all the facilities and the infrastructure in place and the training. And that probably is top notch. Of course, they have the money to do that. So that probably does exist there for him. It probably is an amazing, top of the line program, I'm guessing.
I'll take the second anointing for $7 million, Alex.
You don't already have yours? People have said there are rumors. I don't know.
I can't confirm or deny.
That's it.
All right, Rebecca. To
All
you.
right. Yeah, I just have a quick little one here, just because this has been all over the news too. The 17 diaper mom. And I don't know if either of you have heard about this. RFM, when I was trying to discuss it, said, I don't want to know about any diapers. Not one, not two,
Certainly not
three,
17 of them.
especially not 17 of them. So this was a viral video that came out a month or so ago with an influencer named Hannah. And she put out a video in which she walked around her house. She was doing some single parenting that day. Her husband was off at jury duty. She had a newborn and she had a toddler. And she walked around her house, kind of got real with everybody and said, I have 17 dirty diapers laying around my house, right? She's picking them up. She's putting them in the bag. She puts
That
out
doesn't happen unless you want it to happen, does it?
I never had any dirty diapers laying around. I was very hygienic.
I mean, these two kids are keeping you so busy that you don't have time to put your dirty diaper that you just took off your kid and presumably wipe the kid into a bag.
There's some pictures of the diapers on the coffee table and on the kitchen table and all kinds of places around the house. And again, it was not my experience as a mom, but whatever. But this resonated.
Not bad either.
Again, maybe in the comments, somebody tell us, did you have 17 dirty diapers laying around? But the reason it resonated with moms is because she said, if you're a solo parent out there, a solo mom, a solo dad, single, solo, or whatever it may be, double pat on the back. I commend you because I sure as heck can't do it, she said. So she's admitting this is hard, right? Most influencers are out there perfectly groomed, perfectly dressed, floating around their house with 27 kids. She's saying, no, this is really hard, and I've got dirty diapers laying all over the place. In her video, Hannah Hyatt explains that she recently had to act as a solo parent. Her husband was doing jury duty. I was supposed to do it for like 3 or 4 days. Luckily, it was only 1 day. Being a solo parent just for a day, it's freaking hard, she said. How do you guys do it? So everybody instantly fell in love with her, right? Because she's talking the real talk. She's telling it how it is. She was brave enough to come out and say, we're not perfect. And it's so hard. That's kind of the theme of our podcast, isn't it? It's so hard. So anyway, everybody loved her, and she has a lot of followers, and she has a lot of other videos about her children, her newborn and her little son, where she just goes around and does daily things. So what happened next? Moms started, of course, really loving her and talking about their own difficult experiences and getting real and getting things off their chest. And that was great, until they started paying attention to some of the videos that she was posting about the interactions with her and her husband and her son. And then people started to get a little more concerned, maybe judgy, maybe seeing things that they didn't necessarily think were correct. And I've seen some of the videos that were pulled, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So she posts under a handle, Hannah Hyatt. She has 400,000 subscribers on TikTok. So what happened is that there was a TikTok post, which has since been deleted. It featured her 2-year-old son and the interaction with her husband and the 2-year-old. Now, the 2-year-old was in a shopping cart, in the part where you sit and your legs are sticking through, you're holding onto the bar. They're in the frozen food section, and the dad kind of tosses or hands or puts close to the 2-year-old's face a box of something from the store. Like, here you go. Well, the child goes like this. Okay, it's called the flinch, right? Like noticeably, with kind of a look in his eyes that's like scared, like this. So other moms on TikTok said, okay, that's not a great reaction. If your dad comes near you and kind of hands something to you, that you go like this, as if you're used to being hit, is what people are alluding to. And so then people kind of turn on Hannah, and they're like, this is a problem. They start calling. The reason we're talking about her is because she lives in Ogden. And the first time I heard about her, a friend of mine from Nauvoo reached out and said, is she a Mormon? And I found a bunch of her other videos where she said she's a proud Mormon, proud LDS. She has several videos where she comes out with a lot of hate for the single or the secret lives of Mormon wives, says those aren't real Mormons, that kind of thing. She's a proud Mormon. But now here we have people getting really concerned about her son, and also making the connection to Ruby Franke, Jody Hildebrandt, the same kind of thing. People from out of state are going, what the hell is going on in Utah? What is it with these moms and their kids and, this kind of behavior and treatment? So many people are calling the Department of Child Protective Services on Hannah in Ogden. Other moms took to TikTok and started making their own flinch videos, meaning that they had their child sit there and they would hand their child something and their child would laugh or their child would play. They didn't flinch. And the point being that they were trying to make was a child has that reaction if it's a learned behavior, because in the past, sometime a parent reaching out means something painful is going to happen. You might be hit or something. So again, it's just become this whole thing. And the bottom line is, she's now had to come out and say, in the video, you guys are all freaking out about, they're just playing. She added, they're always playing. And she's talking about her husband because he's the one that handed the box in the grocery store that caused the flinch. They're always playing where they can scare each other. And that's what they're always doing. Nothing's going on. From the moment that my husband wakes up in the morning to the second he goes to bed, he is only thinking about our children and our family and what is best for us. So she's coming out and saying nothing is going on. The other moms on TikTok are saying, we're worried. We don't like this reaction. And the bottom line is, we don't know, but it has been turned over. It's now an official case for the Department of Child Protective Services in Ogden, and they're going to be looking forward. But I guess the reason we cover it is because probably a lot of you will be asked, oh, do you guys know about the 17 diaper? Because it's a Mormon thing again, right? A Mormon mom. People are concerned about abuse, and they're saying, what the heck is going on in Utah, right? So I don't know. Had you guys even heard of this story?
I had not. One dirty diaper is one thing, two's another, but 17 dirty diapers lying around the house is suggestive of coprophilia in my book.
Which is?
Google it, your friend.
Uh-oh.
I'll just second, not the philia thing, but I'll just second the 17 there's 17 dirty diapers in a house with not 13 kids.
Yeah.
That would make sense. If it's just like it's the Duggars, minus all their problems. If it's the Duggars, you go like, okay, I get it. That makes sense. 2 kids, right?
Yeah. A newborn and a 2-year-old.
Yeah. 17 dirty. Again, I was never going to be up for Father of the Year. My kids didn't flinch, and there was never 17 diapers around the house. And if you found 17 diapers in a home with 2 kids, sure as hell, there's other problems in that house. Again, my 2 cents, that just seems entirely telling of other issues going on within the walls of that home.
And speaking of other issues, Rebecca was very, very clever to note that when this gal says about her husband, Hyatt said her husband is the sweetest, nicest, kindest, most loving.
Yes.
That nicest is actually an acrostic for something. What was that again, Rebecca?
Well, I believe that you were the one that brought that up, and I would never bring that up. But yes, our fan was playing word games for sure. But again, we're not going to make a judgment here. We're just going to say it's been turned over to DCF, and she is a nurse also. I should have brought that up too. Her profession is that she is a nurse. So anyway, just another Utah-centric story, but she definitely makes videos saying she's a proud Mormon. She doesn't approve of the kind of women that are on the secret lives of Mormon wives and doesn't know how they can show their face in church and, have their behavior that they have on the show. So she's definitely opinionated about that.
So is that back to Bill now?
I think we're back to Bill. Yeah, I think
I'll take it from you and I'll hand it back to Bill.
All right. So for my last story of the night, there was an article in the Salt Lake Tribune. LDS Church has billions of dollars. So why are some seminary teachers paying for their own printer paper? And here's the first beginning part of the story from the Salt Lake Tribune. When Sharon Haney signed on to teach early morning seminary, almost 30 years.
You know who her dad is, don't you?
I don't know if they're related. Do you know this for sure?
Mr. Haney.
Why do we have so many people named Haney? I'm not kidding. It's like every 5 episodes, there's some other random unrelated person named Haney. What?
Once again, I'm not doing Mr. Haney from Green Acres. I'm doing Alf doing Mr. Haney from Green Acres.
Yes. But still, that name, I don't know.
There is a 70 named Haney too, if I'm not mistaken. And so I thought that's what you were asking, and you were referring to an old TV show, but
yeah. Then we had another person named Haney a couple stories back, because every time I hear it, I start laughing because I know what RFM is going to do.
Yeah. So when Sharon signed on to teach early morning seminary almost 30 years, the volunteer instructor expected the pre-dawn rousings, the many lesson preps, struggles to elicit thoughtful responses from sleepy students. What she didn't anticipate, the hit to her bank account. Haney, who lives in rural South Central Colorado, again, this is from the Salt Lake Tribune, has taught the weekday classes for high schoolers in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints since 1997. By the way, when a ward finds a good seminary teacher, you keep that person there forever. I was in Ohio still attending Sandusky. That person had been seminary teacher for 3, 4, 5 years already, and they're still the seminary teacher, I believe, today. When you find a good one, you keep them. It said during that time.
Yeah, if you find a good one, they're finished. They're done. They're going to be doing this for the rest of their life. By the way, the key here to this article that Bill's reading is this is an early morning seminary teacher.
Yeah.
She doesn't get paid.
No, this is the
church.
Yeah, this is out. I was a seminary teacher for 1 year in Ohio. I got up at whatever time it was, 5 a.m, get to the ward by 6 a.m., teach the kids a lesson. Parents get them back to school by 7:30.
But you got to prepare the lesson too before next day, right?
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's every school day.
Yep. You're supposed to prepare a lesson every day.
Okay.
So there's that. Okay.
It's no wonder you got excommunicated. I think there's more to this story.
We'll tell it someday. Haney, who lives in rural South Central Colorado, has taught the weekday classes for high schoolers in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints since 97. During that time, she estimates that she has spent thousands of dollars, roughly $40 a month in recent school years, of her own money, much of it on standard classroom materials. The seminary superfan is not complaining. The sacrifice is worth it, Haney said, and one she can afford. She realizes, however, that's not the case for everyone. More than a decade ago, she and fellow early morning seminary teacher Jenny Smith launched a Facebook group for instructors. Surprise over the cost of the calling is a regular topic, Smith said. So this is a bunch of people in a group having conversations. It's a 19,000 member community. And the thing that's brought up more than most other things is how much they're spending out of pocket to be a early morning seminary teacher. So the quote is, early morning seminary is, Smith, who lives in Virginia, said, an expensive calling. Curious as to how much of the program's financial burden teachers were shouldering, she sent a survey to members of the Facebook group in 2020. The questionnaire amassed 155 respondents. The majority from within the United States. Results showed that they spent an average of $243 a school year. Smith then asked respondents to rate their difficulty level for paying the seminary expenses. So how tight of a budget they're on anyway, and how difficult it was to spend this extra out of pocket. From a 1, no difficulty, to a 10, extreme difficulty, nearly 40% selected a 5 or higher. These findings worried Smith, who spent the next 4 years trying to raise awareness of the issue with the church educational system and other Latter-day Saint leaders. After all, she reasoned, the global faith, with a piggy bank worth hundreds of billions, has the money. Quote, like most who serve in the church, I don't mind buttoning my belt a little tighter, and have for the kingdom, Smith said. But this is not 1924, and the church is on firm financial ground. It can fund seminary. This is fixable. What few responses she's received to date from church higher-ups, she said, have been dismissive.
Hey, Bill, can you go back to this slide right before this for the number of people in that Facebook group?
19,000.
You know, if there's 19,000 just in this Facebook group, and if you multiply that times what? I'm sorry?
Multiply it by the $243.
Did you already do that?
No. What did you end up with?
Well, my math is so good. Every time I get the right answer. I think we all know that. Now, let me know if this is right. $4,617,000 is how much the church is avoiding paying by having these seminary teachers early morning who don't get paid in the first place to do the most demanding, sacrificing job I think that there is as a Latter-day Saint. And yeah, they're making money. The churches.
It is crazy, right? You ask a person in a congregation to do this volunteer calling, and it's one of the hardest callings in the church is to be a seminary teacher. If you're a good seminary teacher, you're putting plenty of hours in away from the actual lesson. You're getting up really early. A lot of times our seminary teachers in Ohio sometimes would have it at the church, but often it would be at that person's home. So often the seminary teacher would have all these kids coming into their home, staying for an hour, and then back out they would go. So it's your house. You're often feeding them. You're often providing the supplies such as printer paper, which is what they point to in this story, being a major culprit. And you have an institution that's got $265 billion, and it burdens the early morning seminary teachers to pay out of pocket for supplies. It should be simple. And again, one of the comments, we'll get to it here in a moment. One of the comments is that someone says, well, the ward has the flexibility to help with these things. Well, Salt Lake gives the ward so little money. The Young Women's Program gets $300 for the year, whatever it is. The ward doesn't have extra budgeting money. The church has to take care of this at the highest level. Okay, let's get back to this. We're on this one here. Sam Penrod. He was originally a reporter working with KSL Channel 5. He joined them in 1997. Today, he is a spokesman for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So Sam Penrod, Media Relations Manager at Church Communication Department. By the way, notice he doesn't even have it named Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's a much more general statement about where it is that he works and what he does. But he says here, CES, he added, in the he is Sam Penrod. CES, quote, provides the manuals and materials, unquote, for students and teachers. That's true, the interviewed said, if you don't mind having a strictly lecture-based class in which the students are on their phones accessing the scriptures and other materials digitally. The problem, current and former teachers interviewed for this story agreed, is that it's not an ideal setup for drowsy teens, some of whom don't have a smartphone, to study the Book of Mormon at the crack of dawn. You've got to find a way to teach the doctrine, Haney said, other than, quote, let's open our scriptures and read, and you tell me what you think. When they're so tired, their eyes are rolling in the back of their head, unquote. And that, she said, is, quote, is where the money comes in, unquote. Okay, so I just want to note here, the church has tons of money. It doesn't help with the extra cost of what it takes to be a good seminary teacher. Some people have reached out to the church and asked them to step up and take care of it. And so far, those people are feeling dismissed by the church and disregarded. And the church could easily solve this problem, but instead, in spite of having $265 billion, calls on its early morning seminary teachers, which are the people the church is burning out like no one else. It's calling on those folks to spend out of pocket when 40% of them say on some level that it's a financial burden. Your guys' thoughts.
Rebecca.
Oh, I have two comments, actually. First of all, it's not just seminary teachers, although, boy, getting up early, they really are, they take the brunt of it. But, and I'm guessing you guys haven't ever served in women's organizations like primary or young women or activities or anything. I feel like the budget for boys was always a little more. So if you were in callings, you probably were supported in that way. But, you know, I was a primary teacher. That's kind of where I relegated myself to that, or the piano, you know, for like 20 years. I kind of put myself in that little corner. All you get is a manual. You can go to the library and get some crayons and a piece of paper. That's not going to cut it. Every person I know spent hundreds of dollars, printouts and little games and treats. And, you know, you love the kids and you want to do something for them. You want to make the experience bearable. When you're given 50 cents a girl to plan an activities committee, day committee activity, what do? You don't. You get together and you go, it's fine. I'll bring the popsicles. I'm fine. I can bring this. You just do that because you love the kids. But I can't even imagine how much money is spent church-wide by seminary teachers, by primary teachers, by young women advisors, by activity day leaders. I mean, this is what the church does. And then clean the bathroom on top. I don't even know how you could calculate that. So I will say I'm not surprised. Now, I did read something that was really interesting. Right now in Utah, there's release time seminary. And I think it's other states too. And those seminary teachers are paid. It's actually highly competitive in Utah to become a seminary teacher. I've had a child that wanted to do that and tried. You have to take classes, pass the classes, and then you have to do student teaching, where you go and you practice teaching to a seminary group for a week, and then they all mark mark down your score, and you're kind of chosen based on popularity and just how well you'll interact with the kids. I remember when my son was doing his student teaching, the first thing he said is, "Mom, go to Costco. You got to get me bags of candy. You got to get me," it was all the stuff, right? He was going to hand out stuff as they knew the scriptures and that. So even they're seminary teachers in training are spending money. Here's what I read today. It was a notification to a stake in Lehigh. Again, our two themes tonight are Lehigh, and it's so hard. So a stake in Lehigh, where they said that in the coming years, the next 2 or 3 years, they needed to look for in that area 125,000 more seminary students coming into the school system. I'm like, okay, that seems really like a lot. The only thing I can think is that there is a pilot program out there in select areas where they have 8th graders attending seminary. Now, right now it's only 9th through 12th, because 9th is considered high school. Here in Utah, we have junior highs, which are 7 through 9. So you will have a seminary building on a junior high campus because 9th graders go. I'm going to predict right now that they're going to start making 7th and 8th graders go. That's my prediction. That's how they're going to get that number of kids. I can't imagine anything more, but here's how this relates to our story tonight. This announcement for this stake said, we need more teachers. We need volunteers from the stake to come into the school for release time to teach seminary. So that means not paid anymore. I also predict that paid seminary gigs, a lot of them are just going to be, phased out, and you're going to have these volunteers coming in from the stake, bringing their own money, bringing their own resources, and they're going to handle the supposed overflow in release time. What do you guys think about that?
So they're going to be taking some of the, early morning seminary, not paid, full-time paid, but they're going to take some of those full-time jobs and make those not paid, just like the early morning seminary teachers.
Yes.
This church over and over again surprises me with how badly they treat their own members.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll watch and see. That's all I can say. That's what I read.
I think the church leaders think of their members not as a flock to be cared for, but as a resource to be exploited.
Yes. Drained every last drop. That's it.
And Rebecca, you've got a Christmas story to take us.
I've got a teeny tiny thing to end on, and then an even teenier thing to end on. Talk about draining people's resources and sapping their strength and their vital life energy. Fasting on Christmas. This is another thing that appeared in social media that a lot of people weighed in on. I'll just kind of paraphrase for the sake of time, but it's basically a stake. We don't know where. They were very influenced, or at least the stake leaders were very influenced by a talk or an article on the Liahona, A Pattern of Unity in Jesus, and also influenced by President Nelson's talk about the second coming, right, at conference. That really impacted them. And so the stake has kind of come up with an idea. They want to focus on, now is the time for you and me to prepare for the second coming of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, right? So they kind of want to do something special in their stake that's going to prepare for the second coming, which is imminent, right? According to all this rhetoric, and, maybe unleash the power of God and the Lord in their stake. So what can you do? They want to focus on something that's going to make him the center of everybody's life in the stake. So this is what they came up with. Very interesting idea. I feel like it might go viral. So they say beginning on December 25th, it's Christmas Day, in celebration of the birth of Jesus, and continuing all the way through Easter. So we're talking 4 months in remembrance of the Lord's resurrection. They are going to have a continual fast in their stake. Now, how they're going to accomplish this is that every single day they want one person, at least one person, fasting and praying, so that everybody in that stake can know, I may not be fasting today, but somewhere out there, somebody is fasting and praying for the power of the Lord to be here in our stake. And they say ensuring that someone will be fasting every day throughout the entire period, right? Well, how are they going to accomplish this? They're talking about a transformational covenant relationship. So
what the hell does that mean?
I think it means that they believe if they fast, on this massive level, something's got to happen, right? If we do this, there's got to be something
has to happen that's going to be defined so ambiguously that we can ascribe it to anything that does happen.
Exactly. I predict that after this is over, there will be a state conference where everybody gets up and talks about everything that just happened to happen during the 4 months, right? And attributes it to the fast, leaving out anything negative that happened. So what they're going to do is they say the stake members will schedule their fast the day by using the Sign Up Genius app. Right. And there's a link that they're sharing and all of that. And so they say that they're not going to check your signups. I don't know. But the whole idea is, that they just want somebody. If this were back in my day, I can see my parents signing me up to do this, or the family to do this, right? Choosing a special day. So, and of course, then they say, we love you and this is going to be incredible and unleash this power.
Somebody has to monitor this. I mean, if they screw up and have somebody not fasting for like 1 hour between Christmas and Easter, then the whole thing falls apart. It's down the drain.
Feel certain people with scrupulosity, religious OCD might go, I wonder if the person's fasting who's supposed to fast. Oh, I'll do it. Do you know what I mean? I can see that happening. And so my thought is just the holidays that happen in those 4 months. Who is going to sign up to fast on Christmas, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, Easter itself? I mean, those are all holidays. You, RFM, when I discussed this with you, said you would take Martin Luther King Day. You volunteered.
Yes,
for that.
I did. Also, does fasting for St. Patrick's Day, does fasting include not drinking beer?
That's what I'm saying. It does. And not eating corned beef and cabbage and all that fun stuff. Yeah.
Well, you drink water when you fast, don't you?
No, you don't drink water.
Whoa, you are hyper conservative. You were right about your background.
Oh, yeah. No, 24-hour-a-day fasting. And even to the point where you had to watch it while you were brushing your teeth.
I was going to ask you brush your teeth.
I did brush my teeth, but you had to do it really dry.
Don't
you
want to
could
swallow.
not accidentally have any drop of water go down your throat. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
You were a true believing Mormon.
Well, I wasn't, but my parents were, and I was in their grasp. There was nothing I could do. Anyway, have you heard of this bill? What are your thoughts, final thoughts here on this idea of unleashing the power, transactional covenant, and fasting every single day for 4 months?
This sounds a lot like costly signaling.
Yes.
Again,
Yep.
the fast doesn't accomplish something.
No.
Again, we could study this. I know there's some science that says maybe like fasting in certain ways might be healthier for the body.
Exactly. That's true.
I don't disagree with that. But just like sending people from different faiths, including atheists, down different wings of a hospital to give priesthood blessings, fasting isn't going to do anything for the outside world. What it does do is it signals to everyone who the good Mormons are, who are the ones that are willing to suffer on behalf of the church, to put the church first. And so everyone in a ward, everyone in a stake will see who the fasters are. And it will be a chance to say like, oh, that person didn't help and this person did. And it's just a way to sort out the has-beens and the has-nots in Mormonism.
Yeah, and I feel there'll be a lot of switching around. Like, oh my God, I didn't realize that was my daughter's birthday party and I signed up for that day. Can I switch with you? There's going to be a lot of chaos, I feel like, because they try to make sure every day is covered.
I was just going to say that you can ask God to do you a favor, and maybe he will and maybe he won't. But what really gets his attention is if you intentionally make yourself suffer in his behalf. That's what gets his attention, because God likes it when the people who are asking him for things suffer. You know, we look at the Old Testament story of Elijah and the priests of Baal, and we remember about Elijah and, everything in the water on the oxen and the fire. But you remember what the priests of Baal were doing to unsuccessfully get God's attention? They're dancing around and they're cutting themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Flogging or cutting. Yeah.
It's the same principle. Getting God's attention through making ourselves suffer. And I know that fasting we see as normal, and cutting yourself, which I'm not recommending, okay, but it's the same kind of principle to get God's attention and have him do what you want to do. They're the same kind of thing. And I think that the reason that what the priests of Baal were doing strikes us as so weird is just because we're not accustomed to it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And if I could bring up all the temple busting cities that I work with, every single one of them has called me or emailed me and said, we got this, we were made aware of this letter. The members are fasting, that our hearts will be softened and we'll stop trying to block the temple, and that the temple will be built. all of these cities and these residents that I deal with, they're very confused with that idea that people not eating somehow, again, would allow their hearts to be, quote, softened, and that the temple will be built. But fast after fast, it's like if there's nothing to do, you just do that. It's a Hail Mary. It's a penny in a wishing well. It's exactly that.
Yes.
Yeah. So interesting. We'll see what happens. And my co-host Landon on Mormonish made the point. He goes, oh, this is going to be one-upmanship. This stake did it. Oh, yeah. My stake can do it for 6 months. Oh, yeah. My stake can do it for a whole year. Everyone's going to get really fit and thin. It's going to be awesome. I have one last tiny little thing I saw today. This is so cute. Somebody posted that they were in sacrament meeting and their 2-year-old saw the program and said, C3PO, which everybody was laughing at. This is like on a faithful site, adorable. And I have to say, I have never thought of it that way. I think a lot about the angel Moroni, temples, temple building, the angel up on top. I'd never thought of that. So I had to make this meme. But anyway, C3PO. I thought that was adorable.
It is. It's very, very cute. Kids do say the darndest things.
Excellent. All right. Well, I appreciate the stories that you guys brought to us today. I wanted to give you guys each a moment to share what it is that you're working on at the moment, what kind of programs you guys have got coming out this week, and then I'll share a thing or two as well when you guys wrap up.
Rebecca first.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll talk really fast. So we have 2 Christmassy episodes coming up on Mormonish. Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, we are going to debunk the nativity story, right? Is the Christmas story just a story? It's going to get really interesting. It's a really fun episode. On Friday at 11 a.m., we have an episode coming out with Colby and Cammie Reddish, who talk about post-Mormon parenting and Santa
You mean Colby
Claus.
Brown?
I was going to say Colby Brown. We do address what happened on your episode and why that happened. So you might want to tune in for that. But they have a really interesting take on being post-Mormon parents and magical thinking and how you navigate Christmas and holidays like that with children. So really good. And I have to give one more quick plug for our The Good Book Club. We're reading Second Class Saints. January 12th is our virtual meeting, and Matt Harris is going to join us. So if you've always wanted to talk to Matt Harris in person, online, ask him questions about Second Class Saints, send me a message, find us on Facebook, and start reading the book, because he's going to be there for like 2 hours talking to us. Such a great guy. And that's in the beginning of January.
Bill, did you want to go next? I'm going to be going to Saturday and also to Christmas Eve. If we're going chronologically, I can do that if you'd like.
It doesn't matter to me. I can throw this up on the screen. So Wednesday night, we've got a guest on our show, and he and Radio Free Mormon and myself are going to put a show together called LDS Church, a period of unlearning. And I believe the guest name, if I'm not mistaken, forgive me because I should have it in front of me, but Nathan Hinckley, I believe, is his name. LDS Church, a period of unlearning. And what we're going to do is take the Ben Spackman interview that happened recently, take something he said, and have a conversation with our audience about what is happening in Mormonism right now that would indicate that Ben Spackman might be entirely correct, that the church is in a period of unlearning. And I just want to say thank you to Jonathan Streeter, who took my thumbnail. I asked him for a little bit of help, and he helped me improve it. So you should be able to recognize lots of faces there on the screen. But that'll be Wednesday night, Mormonism Live, 6:20 p.m. Radio Free Mormon and myself and Nathan Hinckley. So
I think I recognize them all. There's President Nelson, there's Ben Spackman, there's Joseph Smith Brigham Young, Gordon Hinckley, there's Joseph Fielding Smith, and C3PO.
And C3PO, you nailed it. So there it is. All right, Mr. Radio Free Mormon, what have you been working on, and what are you working on?
Well, here's the thing I want to talk about first, because this is the Christmas Eve, the Radio Free Mormon Christmas Eve party. It's going to be when is it going to be starting? It's going to be starting at 5 o'clock Pacific time.
Oh, is it 6 p.m. instead of 6:20, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so I need to change that. So folks, keep in mind 6 p.m. Mountain time that day.
Okay, so 6 o'clock p.m. Mountain time, and we'll be having a lot of fun people joining us for a brief period of time each. We got a huge lineup, amazing set of people. Stay up with RFM and watch the stars come out on Christmas Eve. Also on Saturday, we should be, we haven't even written or produced it yet, but Colby and I should be doing the last chapter in the Book of Mormon section in the Light on Truth letter. We've been having a great time doing that. That should premiere on Saturday evening, I'm hoping, around 7 o'clock Mountain Time. Colby is a wonderful person to talk with, and he's got quite the mind going. He's on full kilowattage, that guy.
And I just wanted to know, this show on December 24th, 6:20 p.m., the Radio Free Mormon Christmas Eve party is also going to replace Mormonism Live that week. It is a Radio Free Mormon. It's the second annual Radio Free Mormon Christmas show, but it will replace Mormonism Live because Mormonism Live would then fall on Christmas Day, and we'd like all of you to enjoy time with your family. No need to fast for us on that day. So please do join Radio Free Mormon. I'll be there too to help with some of the technology on that side of things, and it really is a fun time, RFM. You had a lot of recognizable faces on last year, and this year sounds like it's just as packed with fun.
I think so. I'm really excited about it. I love doing this. I love producing the show. It puts me in the Christmas spirit like nothing else.
Yeah.
Can I bring up one more thing? Someone in the chat just reminded me, Fairview United is having a fundraising choral event in Fairview, Texas on Friday. And I think it's from 6 to 7 in front of the town hall. They've created the Legal Defense Fund Choir, if you can believe that. And they're going to have a big event there with a candlelight vigil and cocoa and a choir with a lot of the Fairview United people and some of the town councils. So they just want everybody to know, if you're in the area, stop by, say hi, learn more about the fund and what's going on with Fairview. So
I just want to hear him sing.
Chat. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you for that. I just want to hear him sing Praise to the Man.
I don't think that's going to be on the program. So.
Yeah, almost certainly not.
Whatever the temple song is, the kids have to sing.
I love to see the temple.
That's it. That's the song. That's what they got to do. I love to see the
someday.
temple.
Yes, nothing can stop me. Yeah, I wrote a whole song about it. So.
They could get you to write some new lyrics for that. It'd be a hit.
I did write some new lyrics to that. They're on Culture's channel. He put graphics to it.
Did he give you credit this time?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But, it's always me behind it. That's all you have to know. It's always me.
Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate both of you. I appreciate each of you who tuned in this week for the Mormon Newscast. Please check out Rebecca Biblioteca in Mormonish, Radio Free Mormon, with his upcoming programs on the Light on Truth and the Radio Free Mormon Christmas special. And check us out on Mormonism Live this Wednesday night. Folks, we'll see you next week, Monday, 6 o'clock p.m. for the Mormon Newscast. And until then, so long, everybody.
Tommy here. That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast. Close quote.